Thanks for tuning in to the Abiding Presence podcast with Gary Funk. You can reach Gary at theupperroomfamily@gmail.com.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome back to Abiding Presence. And I'm not talking about this podcast. I really do mean abiding presence. That place where your heart is captured by a love that you just can't turn away from, and where your thinking is informed in directions that you never thought to go before. You know, I'm reminded of Jacob in Genesis chapter 28, when he had that dream about that ladder going up to heaven. You remember that? And when he woke up from that dream, he said to himself, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." You know, it's so easy to live a religious life and have the presence of God all around you, and yet to miss it. And me personally, I don't want to be so busy or so distracted that at the end of my life, I will look back and say of the Lord's presence that I was not aware of it. The truth of the matter is that it's so easy to miss, and yet it's also so simple to participate in the life of God that flows from His presence. And without that presence and that guidance informing your personal journey, we will probably make our spiritual life more about being right and about defending our dogmas and about comparing our performance to the performance of others. You know, I'm really not too worried about whether people agree with me or not. My main priority is to point you to presence and the confident identity that you will get from resting in the Lord's favor will give you the curiosity and the freedom to explore more fully this playground of grace that we've been invited to live in. And so I hope that you can adopt this mindset as we continue with episode 8 of our series on divorce, remarriage, and the grace of God. When we landed last time, I mentioned a few examples of what a violated marriage covenant looked like. And I was explaining that when a marriage covenant has been violated, and when there is no repentance or no softening of the heart to pursue a spirit-led reconciliation by one spouse or another, that marriage covenant is dead. And to live life pretending that it's alive is merely going to cause more damage than good for both parties. And not only is it living under false pretenses, it also makes a mockery of the entire covenant of marriage. You might remember, like back in the day when the ancient people of God disobeyed the Lord, even while they were offering all their sacrifices and doing all their complicated religious rituals, God said to them through Amos the prophet, "I hate your religious gatherings and your false worship. Your assemblies are a stench to me." So apparently, God did not appreciate His people living in pretense, and that was because their two-faced lifestyles were making a mockery of the covenant that God had established with them. And in Jeremiah, we read how the Lord used strong divorce language to let His people know that how done He was with their unfaithfulness. The covenant was violated, and God allowed that covenant to pass. Thankfully, however, God did not give up on people, and now we have a new covenant that depends not on the faithfulness of any man or on any group of people, but on the faithfulness of Christ alone. It's a completely different focus that we have now in our new covenant. But that's a whole new topic altogether. Today we're talking about marriage covenants. And you know, when we read Jesus' words in Matthew, "What God has joined together, let man not separate," what do we think it is that separates? You know, often we assume that a divorce is what separates what God has joined together. But think about it. Is that really accurate? I think that assumption reveals that we are only looking at the surface. I think what Jesus has been teaching consistently all along is that what really separates what God has joined together is hard-heartedness. That's what separates what's been joined together. It's sinfulness in our own hearts that separates. The divorce is simply a formal acknowledgement or a legal acknowledgement of what's been true for a long, long time already. Namely, the covenant is broken and dead. Now, of course, this breaks the heart of God, but He will still acknowledge this reality, and He will still care for the broken people who are spilling out of these violated covenants. And His care, my friends, stays strong and faithful and true, even though the people in the covenant may not be so faithful. And so if I had to summarize how I understand the Father's heart in this whole matter of divorce, remarriage, and the grace of God, I would probably say something along the lines of this. When a marriage covenant has been violated, and I mentioned a few examples at the end of our last episode of what that might look like, and when hard-heartedness has made reconciliation attempts impossible, it may be best to close that chapter of your life and to move on. In terms of remarriage, follow the Lord's leading and the wisdom of godly counsel in your life. Assuming that there has been enough time allowed for a proper healing journey, and assuming that the fruit of the person's life releases the aroma of Christ, I see no reason in the scriptures to prohibit a spirit-led remarriage with the full blessing of God. So that's how I would understand this issue if I had to sum it up. And I feel that this view is fully in line with all the scriptures that we have studied, and I feel that it also best reflects the heart of the Father towards his children. That would be my understanding. You can choose to study it and understand it differently, and that would be 100% okay. But as long as we keep in mind, are we always releasing the aroma of Christ, and are we always accurately revealing the heart of the Father the way that Jesus did? That's kind of the bottom line and our motivation for holding to the views that we do. So, let's say that as you've been listening to this whole series, you've become convinced that your marriage covenant has indeed been violated. You may never have thought of it that way before, for whatever reason, or you may have been taught that you should never even think about separation or divorce under any circumstances, or you may not have recognized all the different things that constitute a violated or a broken covenant. So if you now see your own broken situation through a different lens, you might be asking yourself, okay, so then where do I go from here? I think it's very important to understand that every relational breakdown and every separation and divorce story is different. Your trauma story and your healing journey, those things are unique to you. It's not helpful to compare your journey to someone else's and just, kind of copy what they do and hope it all works out okay for you. It's great when people with shared experiences connect with each other, share their stories and inspire each other. But the purpose of that connection can't be to force your story into someone else's life or vice versa. So, as this painful journey unfolds for you, I'd encourage you to process your unique journey with the Lord and, make him your main conversational partner as you move through the various stages of your own healing. And, take note of what grabs your heart and write down any thoughts that you get that make you feel, like hopeful and alive. What types of conversations are speaking life to you? What songs are washing over your heart like a refreshing and a cleansing wave? What simple experiences are you having out in nature's beauty that are awakening to your heart to see God at work in areas that you never saw before? These are some of the ways that the Lord confirms things in your heart, and they really are worth writing down and sharing with people who are close to you. But the question still hangs over us. Where do I go from here? And I guess the answer would depend on where you are right now, because everyone will be in a different place when they start. Maybe you know that you're dying inside and that your marriage is a toxic and a defiled relationship, but you're afraid that if you take any action in terms of, getting out or anything like that, this will put you on bad terms with the Lord. It's possible that the belief system you've had all your life has led you to believe that God values an ideal marriage covenant over your own safety and well-being. And, if you've made it this far in this podcast series, you'll have heard me challenge that idea again and again and again. The Lord always cares for individuals over institutions, even over the institution of marriage. The hardened hearts will have to give an account to him, and the broken hearts the Lord will redeem and restore if they look to him for help. The Lord's desire is to always lead you beside still waters, and he wants you to rest in green pastures. And these are powerful images of what your life can look like when it is lived from presence. Or maybe you're having conversations with a trusted friend about what you're feeling and about what your next steps might be. And maybe you're starting to see that it just might be the Lord who has put these new thoughts in your heart about moving slowly, forward in a brand new direction towards freedom. And you might be feeling nervous, but the pain of staying stuck where you are now is becoming stronger than your fear of moving forward. Or maybe you've already left a toxic relationship and now you're struggling with guilt about your decision, and all the condemnation that's being aimed at you only compounds your shame. Or maybe you've already left and now you're feeling your peace slowly returning to you as you finally have time to think for yourself in a safe place. So these are all kinds of scenarios, and there are many more, but these are a few of the scenarios where you may find yourself at this point in your marriage meltdown. And so I'm hoping here that what we're about to talk about here will connect in some way with a part of your journey, and that it will encourage you at a deep heart level. Now, please don't take anything that you hear in this series as, things that you have to do, but just be open to the Spirit's guidance inside of your heart in case there's like one little thing that can spark some fresh hope inside of you. I would say that's a good idea to pray for an openness to hear what you might need to hear in His presence. Let it never be said of you that the Lord was in this place, but you were not aware of it. From what I've observed, the thought of leaving a relationship strikes fear into many spouses, even though they know they are dying where they're at. And there are many valid reasons for feeling this fear. That struggle is real. But keep this in mind. Choosing to separate yourself from an unhealthy relationship does not automatically mean that you have to get a divorce. Sometimes a separation of this type gives people the time and the space to sort out their thoughts. And sometimes a season of, physical and relational distancing can be the catalyst for positive change. But at the very least, it will give you, in your pain and in your brokenness, it'll give you some space to think and to heal in the presence of people who are safe and supportive. And you might just find the Lord touching your heart in a tender way that you never thought could happen to you. I read a few studies that were done on women who were stuck in abusive relationships, various types of abuse. And these studies reveal that on average, an abused woman will return to her abuser approximately 6 times before leaving him for good. And to many of us who hear this stat for the first time, this might not make much sense to us. But before you judge such a woman, be sure to hear some of the reasons they give as to why they go back. Remember, these are distressed spouses who are under intense pressure, and they are emotionally worn right into the ground. They feel, honestly, little to no hope. Some of these women find themselves homeless with their kids when they leave. The crisis shelters may be full, and there's no one that they know who will take them in, so they end up going back so at least the kids have some place to stay. And in other cases, the manipulation and the false promises that are part of an abuser's abuse cycle draws the woman back in because she so desperately wants to believe that maybe this time he's actually changed. And, they're clinging to a fading hope that maybe this time it'll work out for good. And too often it doesn't work out the way they had hoped. Most often that's not the case. And then there's sometimes cases where the courts order joint custody of the kids, and the mom cannot stand the thought of leaving her kids alone with her angry husband. And so she would rather go back with them and take the abuse in order to shield the kids from that kind of treatment. That's a mother's heart, isn't it? And in some other cases, there are threats of physical harm made by the husband that make a woman too terrified to even think of leaving. And so these studies tell us that on average, after 6 cycles and leaving and coming back to an abusive husband, the woman will leave for good. And so instead of judging them, we need to understand the stress and the shame and the loneliness that these women live under. And if you have the privilege of supporting such a spouse, who knows? Maybe you can help reduce that nasty return cycle down to almost 0. Wouldn't that be something? Either way, the good news in all this sadness is that once someone leaves a toxic relationship for good, the healing can begin. Now, emotionally, it may take a while before the difference is felt inside, but in the care of safe people who know the heart of God, the healing will begin. Now, some of the pain you've been suppressing may come out in ways that can feel a little destabilizing, but getting that toxicity out is part of the healing. It's strange how our minds can get bent out of shape in seasons of trauma, because when toxicity is the water you swim in, the very thought of freedom can seem almost dangerous. Now I'd like to say a few words about detoxifying. It's important to understand that when a spouse comes from a broken or abusive relationship, there will be toxic emotional baggage inside. It can be, it can range from mild to very severe, but this toxicity needs to be unloaded. We call this detoxifying, and if it doesn't happen, these toxic emotions will show up somewhere else down the road in harmful ways. It might show up in the form of an anxiety disorder or a depressive disorder, or it may show up as a type of physical ailment or other stress disorders. What we're trying to say is that this type of toxicity doesn't just disappear on its own. It just goes underground and resurfaces elsewhere in an ugly way. And there's a very harmful belief out there that says that the way to heal this is to deny and to suppress all your negative feelings and just get on with life. Just put it all behind you. Hakuna Matata. And this thinking will lead to great harm. And don't believe for a minute that this advice will ever get you on the path to healing. I once heard a professional counselor tell someone, "You've had this traumatic event happen to you, and you've never told anyone about it until you came in here today. Why is it that there is no anger being expressed as you tell me the story of your trauma?" Now, I think you can see what that counselor was getting at, can't you? There was indeed hidden anger behind that story, but it had been suppressed. And so let me give you this freedom. And I encourage you to give yourself this freedom. You are not being unspiritual or improper by embracing a season of detoxifying. Every person's detox journey is different, but you need a healthy emotional or mental detox. And so if you're with a safe person who understands this, you will feel safe in dumping your emotions on the table, knowing that the person you are with will understand you, they'll maybe pray with you, and they'll just let you be real. And if you're the one caring for someone in this emotionally, toxified state, learn to become aware of what a detoxifying conversation looks like. The more real and the deeper the detox conversations, the sooner you can get on to the rebuilding stage, but don't rush this season. And our experience has been that after several weeks, or sometimes it might be a few months, but after a season of deep detoxifying conversations, we notice that the emotion or the grief in the conversation changes. I mean, you can't miss it. The tone of the voice, the body language, and the emotions, they all change when the toxicity has almost run its course. And it's encouraging for the hurting person to hear from you as a friend that you can notice these positive changes in them. When you feel like you've pretty much got it all out of your system, you may be able to talk about how you feel differently now, or how you might even feel like you're ready for the next step. Now, remember one thing about this detoxing journey. It's not necessarily a one-time event. And even though the first detox season can be the big one, and it'll probably take the longest, don't feel bad if you come across more toxicity that needs to come out later on. These seasons don't come in nice, clean blocks, and you usually don't get much advance notice either. So, for example, if you have another meltdown 3 months later or something like that, there's probably something there that needs attention. So bring that to the Lord and to your friends and, to work through it. But be encouraged by this. You're not going backwards on your healing journey. You're just healing a layer in your heart that you could not access before. So when you look at it this way, and when you expect these times to happen, you will handle them better. And when your toxicity is gone, you will feel new feelings about your situation, and you'll be able to think with greater clarity. Let me give you an example. I spoke to a man who had been feeling angry and betrayed because his wife had been cheating on him for years. But in recent months, he told me that he had actually begun to feel sorry for her and for what her choices were doing to her. So tell me, what do you hear in this story if you're listening for toxicity or his pattern of detoxifying? Someone who is filled with toxicity will not, or cannot, I should say, express sorrow for the actions of their offender. So this statement from this man, this is coming from someone who has worked through a lot of hurt and a lot of toxicity in order to be able to express this softness of heart towards his offender. Now, there's no need to set a time limit to your detox season, but do understand that it is a season. Detoxifying your heart eventually needs to give way to other seasons, or else it means that you're just stuck and spinning your wheels. A good friend of ours went through a painful marriage breakup a number of years ago. She told us that in her first year of being alone, very early in her own healing journey, she met a woman in her church who had gone through a very similar experience that she had. She had also been betrayed and abandoned by her husband, and her pain was obvious in her voice and her emotions were still quite raw. And as they spoke, our friend listened to the pain pouring out of this woman, and she remembered having felt all those same feelings only a few months earlier. And at one point in the conversation, our friend asked this woman, "When exactly did your husband leave you?" And the woman said, "It was about 10 years ago." And in that instant, our friend realized that this woman had actually never effectively detoxified. She was simply wallowing in the past, spinning her wheels, and not moving forward. And our friend determined in her heart that day that her healing journey would be different. She would unload her heart of any past baggage, and she would take whatever steps it took to find the help that she needed to move on and really move on. There was going to be no self-pity running her life. And you know what? To this day, we are witnesses that she has kept her promise. She is free and she is healed and she is speaking life and joy to everyone that she meets, including us. Her presence really is a gift. But if she had not chosen to unload her own toxic emotional baggage and to replace it with the presence of Jesus in her life, where might she be today? So what about you? How has the detoxifying process worked in your life? What did your detox journey look like? Or should I say, what does it look like? Were you given permission to detoxify your heart in a healthy way? Or were you just told to suck it up and forget the past? Do you have safe people in your life that you can trust with your most honest feelings? You know, these people in your life, they serve as anchors for you when the emotional storms are raging in your soul. The Lord knows that you're going to need a few good anchors for this journey, my friend. Now, let's suppose you're talking to someone who's contemplating leaving a toxic relationship. Regardless of when a spouse leaves a relationship, the decision to leave belongs to the spouse who is leaving. So if you are helping someone who is in a bad relationship, you can't make them leave. It has to be their choice. If you're the one who has to make that choice to leave a toxic relationship, and if the fear of leaving your spouse feels almost paralyzing, you are not alone. I realize that when you're at your wit's end, it's totally natural to feel so numb that you almost feel like you can't decide anything for yourself. And it's almost as if you don't even trust your own judgment. You may even want others just to tell you what to do. You might know that feeling, just tell me how to fix this and I'll just do it. But as you know, for the most part, having someone tell you what to do is not the most helpful path to follow. And, sometimes in the rare cases where lives are really in danger, kind of like, when the house is on fire, someone may need to rush in and get people out. But more often than we might think, the house is not actually on fire. And in most of the cases that we've been involved in, wise counsel has had an important place, but part of the wisdom also lies in not telling people everything that needs to be done or everything that they have to do. Give them thoughts and questions that lead them to healthy solutions that they can own and that they can apply. Allow people the time that they need to heal, and it's important to demonstrate your confidence in their ability to hear the Lord as your conversations orbit around the abiding presence of God. And so I need to remind myself that a slower healing journey is often a deeper healing journey. So honestly, as long as they're safe, what's the big rush? Be sensitive and allow the Lord to lead the journey and help others to learn to see God's guidance in their lives as it comes from some pretty unexpected places along the way. Help them connect the dots that they might miss. Nothing boosts confidence in the Lord like experiencing His work in your life in a way that you know could not have happened any other way. Years ago, I heard a wise person once say, "Let the process speak." Now, it took me a while to think that over, since I was more of the mindset that, answers come as, answers. I have a problem and I want an answer, right? But this wisdom changed all of that for me as I learned to see the events and the people in my life to be more of an unfolding solution, almost like a slow release answer, you might call it. And this journey of healing that we're talking about today, that's how this type of guidance usually unfolds. You get grace for today. You have an encouraging conversation tomorrow. And the next week, a song might bring healing to your heart. And then the next week after that, you read a book that shines some light into another area of your life. And then in between all of that, someone shows up in your life and helps you tie up a few loose ends in another area of your thinking. And as these unrelated dots get connected, you realize that none of these dots alone were the magic answer. But together, they end up forming a meaningful picture for you, and you will get this sense that this whole process is speaking to you, and it's leading you in a way that is far more powerful than any one person just, telling you what to do. And so, my friend, learn to let the process speak. This is a different way of looking at your problem, and it also changes how you pray about your situation. Your prayers can actually change from, Lord, give me the answer, or Lord, get me out of this mess, to Lord, help me to trust you for the next step, the next song, the next conversation. Help me to connect the dots that your fingerprints are leaving in my life as you are healing my heart. So I'm encouraging you to have a longer term mindset that allows the Lord to speak through the process. And as I've been saying all along, I'm not here to direct that process that is unfolding in your life. I'm here to point you to the presence. And as you sit with the Lord and as you get a sense of His affection and care for you, expect there to be new thoughts and ideas and desires to rise up inside of you that you know very well are not your own. If you're not sure how these new thoughts fit into your situation, share them with a wiser friend who is walking alongside of you and see how the Lord will help you connect the dots through those conversations. One thing that my wife and I listen for carefully when we talk with someone who is struggling in this area is, what type of support team does this person have? Who's speaking into their situation and who are their anchors? We know that the Lord is our main anchor, right? But some people spilling out of these very toxic situations are so traumatized that they can't see the Lord in their darkness. And in times like that, you don't preach at them or you don't tell them to get more faith or anything like that. That's not going to do them any good. Instead, you allow the compassion of God to flow through you in creative ways so that God's love comes alive in their hearts. You see, they may not recognize God as God in their confusion and in their pain, but they will understand a hug from a caring friend. They may not understand much about the Bible, but they will surely understand your willingness to help meet a need that their kids have. And they may not know the presence of God the first time that you meet them, but they will understand a good cup of coffee or a barbecued meal along with some honest and deep conversation. And by doing these things, you just might become the first trusted support person in this person's life who will help to walk them through this dark valley and back up the other side to freedom. And counselors and good teaching books and other sources all agree that you need a good, solid support network on any separation or divorce journey. And as this journey unfolds, the number of people and the types of people that you will need on your team will become clear over time. Certainly, your first line of inner circle people will be those who understand you and who care for your heart and who want to see you be restored to a healthy and flourishing version of you. Sometimes these are people that you've known all your life. And sometimes these are new people who show up unexpectedly in your life, and you quickly develop a trusting friendship as you realize that they really are there to care for your heart. I think it's wise to be careful who you let into this inner circle. Some people may want to be there only to tell you what to do and to try and control your life. And others may actually be offering toxic counsel, like those who would tell you something like, hey, you know that God hates divorce, so you better come up with a better plan B in a hurry. Advice like that isn't helpful, and a toxic voice like that is not going to bring you any measure of healing. I had several conversations with an elderly woman who left her husband many years ago because he was a violent alcoholic. An extended family member in her life, someone who was very religious, contacted her and asked her to show him from the Bible where she found it written that she had a right to leave her husband. Well, I think based on what we've discussed so far, I think you know where that comment belongs. Only toxic people will say things like that to a hurting spouse, and there's no place for such a shame slinger in your inner circle, because they are going in the opposite direction of where the Father's heart is leading you. Religious condescension like this, especially when it is cloaked with Bible verses, that tends to paralyze a lot of people as they are flooded with shame and also this fear that God may be against them. Fact of the matter is that there are quite a few things that the Bible doesn't instruct people on specifically, and none of the steps that you need to take will be found by handling the Bible in this way. And after I left that elderly woman's place and after our conversation, a thought came to me. Someone could just as well have asked her religious family member, show me in your Bible where we are instructed to abolish slavery, because he won't find that in his Bible either. And so when scriptures like this are thrown at you to increase your sense of shame, you know immediately that the person doing this has no concept of how to use the Bible. They're treating it like a rule book, and the way their questions are worded, that reveals that they are not interested in helping you discover the Father's heart in your pain. Their objective is to prove that they are right and to make you feel like a shameful failure. And it just becomes another religious adventure and missing the point. So, you do not want any religiously toxic people in your inner circle as you navigate a marriage meltdown. And this can be tough if the closest people to you are toxic in this way, especially if those people are, people like your parents or some church leaders or other things like that. That can make it very hard. And regardless of how hard it may be, you need real support to survive these religious darts being thrown at you. And I firmly believe that the Lord sends the support and the wisdom into your life when you need it most. I'm reminded of an ancient Eastern proverb that I think speaks encouragement to you on this part of your journey. When the student is ready, a teacher will appear. And I think that in every case that my wife and I have been involved with, we have encouraged the person we're helping to include a professional Christian counselor as a part of their team. Now, this could possibly be a pastor, but you can't automatically assume that every pastor is a qualified counselor as well. You might have to check that out. And also, it might be helpful to know what your pastor's position is and how they handle conversations about separation and divorce and remarriage. But in any case, counselors really do add an extra boost to anyone's healing journey. My wife and I are not counselors, but we found that our role as supportive and encouraging friends works better when there's a regular flow of professional counsel flowing into this person's life at the same time. And a lot of what we end up doing is really just meeting the practical needs of the person that we are walking alongside. So sometimes I fix their cars, or we help with childcare, or we serve food and ice cream. And in between all of that, we have many conversations on our deck or around our table. And we also ask lots of questions. Questions like, what new things or new thoughts has the Lord been impressing on your heart this week? Or, how did your last counseling session go? What did you learn that you felt was encouraging or empowering for this stage of your journey? Or, how can we help you apply what you think you're ready to apply? Or how can we help you apply what you learned? And in our conversations, we make sure to highlight any positive changes that we sense in what we are hearing. So I might say something like, hey, it sounds like your thinking has shifted from being hopeless and angry to being more hopeful and curious about the next step that the Lord is preparing you for. Is there anything you'd like us to do to support that next step? And we also pray together nearly every time we meet with whoever it is that we're meeting. And we make sure that we are available for them, but we don't want to be pushy. It's really about being a friend and about friends helping friends. You don't need 20 or 30 inner circle type people in your life, because sometimes there can actually be, too many cooks in the kitchen, if you know what I mean. Quality is more important than quantity. If those closest to you are truly caring for your heart in ways that you feel are meaningful, then you probably won't need that many. And you will know when you're in the presence of someone who cares for you as well. So let them be your support, and maybe try to see them as one of the ways that God is reaching out to you through their care and their support. And as your healing journey unfolds, you may discover a need to add another person or two to your team. Sometimes my wife and I have advised someone to actually get the police involved, because sometimes the police actually need to be part of your team. And if your separation journey doesn't lead to a healthy reconciliation, you might eventually need a lawyer as part of your team as well. These are all part of your support team, okay? I remember one friend that we were helping. There seemed to be an issue with the quality of legal advice that she was being given, and so I offered to do some lawyer shopping for her to see if there was a better solution to her dilemma. She was very grateful for the offer, and she gave me permission to try to dig up a better solution. Now, I had no clue where to start, and I prayed that the Lord would reveal His will in this process, and then I just picked up the phone and got busy. It took me 3 days of calling all over the place, leaving messages and waiting for replies. Well, some of the replies that I did get were not very pretty. But finally, on the third day, I felt that the Lord had led us to an amazing lawyer who had an amazing blend of compassion and professionalism, and she got the job done that needed to get done, and she did it in record time. So I think you're getting the idea of how important a support team is to your healing. And as I said before, let the process speak, and feel free to add or remove people as you feel your journey requires. It's your journey, and the Lord is leading you, okay? His favor is upon you, and He will speak through those that He's brought into your life to help you. And as the Father's heart is revealed to you, you will know that there's a fresh awakening happening inside of you that you wouldn't trade for anything. Now, I realize that many people who are enduring a marriage meltdown are not in a clear or peaceful state of mind where they can, strategize and establish a support team the way that I've neatly described it here. Because, as you know, real life is usually far messier than that. In reality, when a relationship blows up, one spouse may feel so confused and so hurt that they may not even know where they're going to land. And they might not be able to clearly explain how they feel, and they may not even trust their own feelings and their own decisions at first. So my hope is that such a person lands in a place where someone who is truly caring picks them up and assures them that they'll be there for them no matter what. And so if someone like this ever lands on your doorstep, well, you just might be the first person on their support team, and they might not even know it. And so if you're a support person who's walking alongside someone who's going through a traumatic season like this, maybe take note of what kind of team is taking shape around your hurting loved one. What types of voices are speaking into their situation? Obviously, you can't control what is all being said to them, but knowing what is coming their way does help you to evaluate what sources are helpful for their healing journey and which ones are not. This is no time for confusion and shame to be compounded for our hurting loved ones. And although you can't eliminate every negative voice, you can be a very strong positive voice, and you can pray for the right people to become involved at the Lord's leading. Sometimes you might feel led to suggest other good people to speak into their situation as well, as we've done, as we've suggested professional Christian counseling to be part of someone's journey. And as you develop a relationship of trust over time, you can make more and more of these types of suggestions. There's never a need to force anything, and there's never a need to try and to control all the outcomes. Just be that friend for them that's solid as a pillar. Now, if you're the one on a healing journey yourself, you probably remember where you first landed after your marriage meltdown. And only you will know all the layers of emotion and pain or numbness maybe that you felt at that time. And so if you're still in the midst of this journey, I'd encourage you to keep one eye open for circumstances to unfold that are amazing in their timing and in what they bring to you just when you need it. And I found that the 3 methods that the Lord uses most often in my life are surprise, surprise, surprise. And these surprises can come in the form of people, good books, practical teachings, songs, or new thoughts and impressions that you get when you go for a peaceful walk in nature. Just allow the Lord to surprise you and then just thank Him when He does. The scriptures are full of instructions to care for one another, to love one another, to help one another, to bear one another's burdens. This one anothering idea is really the big idea behind this emphasis on having a wise and godly team walk alongside of you in these tough seasons. You can borrow confidence from them until it slowly becomes your own. So as we wind down our time today, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Depending on where you are on your recovery journey, maybe take some time to ponder this question. Who's really all on my team? And in what ways are they collectively reflecting the tender heart of the Father to me? Your answer to this question might reveal to what degree you are healing or to what degree you're just spinning your wheels. So till next time, grace and peace to you, my friends, and may your heart's cry always be, surely the presence of the Lord is in this place, and I want to be more aware of it.